Hello and welcome to the MCG, wrapping up day 2 of the 4th test of the border-gavaskar trophy over here between India and Australia. Izzy Westbury in the box with Callum Ferguson this afternoon. And, well, Callum, a lot went on, as per. Broken record right here. Yeah. What was your highlight of the day?
Well, I tell you what, India offered the Australians a way in late in the day. There was a catastrophic run out between Jaiswal and Virat Kohli, and I'd have to say it was the way Scott Boland exploited the chink in the armour that the Indians offered. And again, late on day 2, much like Scott Boland just tends to do, rips the heart out of the opposition late in the day. Gloomy conditions, bit of cloud cover. Scott Boland, for me, just exploiting the opposition late in the day.
Now, not that I want to push any buttons or create any controversy, but who are we attributing blame for that run out to?
Oh, okay. Well, I was watching it pretty closely and I've seen the replays. Look, when the striker hits the ball to mid-on or mid-off and calls yes, generally as the non-striker, you just take off and you go.
Right, it's the striker's call.
Yes, because they're running to the danger end. And you'd have to say that Virat had turned to follow to ball watch. And that's a bit of a concern generally as a batter at the non-strikers end when the ball's being hit to mid-on and mid-off. So, look, young Jaiswal's the one that's had to go in the end, but generally you would say that the striker is running to the danger end in that scenario. It was a tough one, hey?
Yeah, I think, and that really was the moment that seemed to turn the day, certainly. Yeah. And if you look at, it was Scott Boland who was bowling as well, so you almost had that. It was almost as if Jasprit was trying to get off strike.
Well, you can't blame him. Scott Boland is so damaging late in the day because he just challenges your off stumps so regularly with subtle variations and movement. So, yeah, it was. I tell you what, it was a nervous bit of running between the wickets, and when you hesitate like that, generally there's going to be a bad result at the end of it.
And arguably after that, it sort of catapulted towards India losing 3 for 6.
Well, so often, Izzy, it's a run out that starts these collapses. 3 for 6 they lost.
And you can see Kohli almost felt culpable, even if it's difficult to work out who was actually to blame. He definitely felt the heat there. He was one of the wickets to fall. We'll go through the scores actually quickly because Australia started the day on 6 for 311. They were all out after lunch for 474, but there was a wonderful partnership between Pat Cummins, Steve Smith. Pat Cummins eventually fell for 49. Steve Smith, again, I say back in form. He's already made 1 century in this test series so far.
Yes.
He made 140. Another 4 wickets to, Jasprit Bumrah, just the performer of the series so far with the ball. 25 wickets for the series
Extraordinary
already.
Stuff. Just keeps coming.
He could be bowling another innings this match. He's got another match to go at the SCG. I mean, this could be record-breaking stuff.
Well, he's put his body on the line too. He's bowled a lot
100%.
of overs and he looks like he's got a niggle or two.
But unfortunately for India, they lost Rohit Sharma pretty early. It seems, again, broken record territory. KL Rahul he was batting brilliantly with Jaiswal, and it really took a peach of a delivery from Pat Cummins, top of off, to break that partnership and bowl KL Rahul in the end. Jaiswal went on. Kohli put on 102, so a century stand before Jaiswal fell for 82. So that was the run out for the 3rd wicket. That was pretty much, capitulation for India. They lost 3 for 6. And, of course, it was, as you were saying, Cal, Mr MCG Scotty Boland who removed Kohli then, caught behind, little feather. He's done that a few times this series. Yes. And it means that at the close of play on day 2, India 5 for 164. Now, to me, that day, we've had such ridiculous days of Test cricket. It was only yesterday that we had Sam Constas scooping Bumrah for 6s here, there and everywhere. But it reminded me the ebbs and flows. We had a bit of good, brilliant batting, some great partnerships, and a spell of bowling from both Bumrah and the Australian quicks. I don't know if you've seen that meme of the former Chelsea manager, Antonio Conte, where he goes, 1 regular day of the Barclays Premier League, that's all I will ever ask. It will never happen. I feel like we've been doing that the whole way through this Test series. 1 regular day of Test cricket.
Yes.
Was this the first regular day of Test cricket?
I think it was. To be honest, I remember, the day that Jaiswal in Perth made a big 100. That felt a little bit more like Test cricket for a period of time, but this was definitely it. And it ebbed and flowed, as we love so much about Test cricket. Both sides, they came into the game at different stages. It looked like India were just starting to get a foothold, and then the run out, and then the collapse late in the day. It just had everything that we love about Test cricket. Some good aggressive stuff, and then some good defensive work as well from from batters trying to see through the new ball. I just felt like we were back into Test cricket, and it was wonderful to see.
And talking of Test cricket style of play, Steve Smith, I feel this whole series, he hasn't been in the full flow that we know of the, 2019 glory years of Steve Smith. He's had to really work for his runs. 140 from 197 deliveries. He seems to be back in the flow of things towards the end. What impressed you most about his innings today?
Yeah, it's interesting. During the white ball series against Pakistan at the start of the summer, we really felt like we were starting to see some flow in his game. He didn't get the big scores that he was looking for, but he was moving through the ball nicely on the front foot, and he was pushing back onto the back foot really nicely. There was a hook shot he played off Jasprit Bumrah. He was clearly looking to get forward, batting out of his crease, but Bumrah bashed the ball into the wicket, and he hooked it and eased it over deep fine leg for 6. And that was a moment for me that said, okay, he's now moving both forward and back nicely at the crease, and he was starting to show some fluency. So I feel like this innings is a really important marker for Steve. It's a big 18 months of Test cricket coming up. If we would love to see him play for longer, but certainly through to the next Ashes series, there's a lot of very important Test cricket to come. This was a wonderful sign for Australia, because this wasn't just a hard-working, blue-collar 100. This was the sparkling Steve Smith that we've seen and grown to love over a long period of time. And I feel like this is a marker for him.
11 Test hundreds against India. I think that's more than anybody else in the history of Test cricket. I mean, 11 Test hundreds full stop would be pretty amazing. But against a side like this, extraordinary things. I must say, I feel like we almost have to recalibrate when it comes to Steve Smith, because he just played so effortlessly and so in such an unorthodox fashion in his sort of the height of his career, that actually working a bit harder at the start of the innings, then getting into the flow, that this is the kind of the next chapter of Steve Smith, and we just have to understand that it's Test cricket is not easy when you're in your mid-30s.
That's right, and you're coming up against some of the world's best every second game, every game sometimes, and what I would say is his strike rate was what was quite noticeable for mine. He was striking at 70 per 100 balls for the majority of that innings. Even through some tough periods, he was getting off strike really well. And then when the opportunities came, he found the boundary. And I think the way he rode the waves of momentum was really impressive.
And even the way in which he got out today, he defended a shot in front of him, and then it reminded me, I don't know if you played table tennis and you do a good old top spin. Sometimes you can spin it enough so the ball goes onto the one side and comes back over, because it rolled back over his stumps almost in slow motion. You could see it unfolding in front of you, and it ricocheted back onto his stumps. Have you ever been dismissed like that? It must be agony.
Oh, not in that fashion. I mean, he was halfway down the wicket almost, slapped the ball off the bottom edge onto at least one of the pads, may have clipped both, and then to watch it roll for such a long distance, nearly 3 metres back onto his stumps, that would have been brutal. I don't think I've ever had that. I've had balls bounce off gloves and thigh pads and pads back onto the stumps, but to watch the ball for what would have seemed an eternity back onto his stumps would have just been brutal.
It's almost as if you wanted to say to him, like, "Oh, Steve, it's happening!
Stop it!
Scramble back!
No, stop it! Yeah,
actually,
that's
also,
right."
like in football, you've seen that, but I've seen that before sometimes as well, when it's sort of the ball hits the post or something, and you can see it in slow motion just trickle across the line. But he made 140, so hey ho, what's it to anybody?
You're going to get out like that once in your life, I reckon.
Now, another man who we don't often talk about his batting exploits. Well, actually, we're talking increasingly about his batting exploits over the last couple of years. Pat Cummins, skipper, he made 49, just falling short of his half centuries, averaging 22 this year, which is the most since when he first broke onto the scene. He had a pretty high average back in the sort of mid-teen, 2017, etc. But the most runs he scored in a calendar year. He's got a lot on his plate. Bowling talisman, skipper now, of course, as well. Is he approaching the sort of hallowed all-rounder status?
Yeah, look, I think what we're seeing is what we thought we would get from him earlier in his career. He's a natural batter. I feel he's quite a natural player and ball striker. And he just had a bit of a wobble for a few years. There's no doubt about it. But over the last 2 years in particular, he's really found his method, and he's playing nicely off both the front and back foot. No doubt his strength is the front foot, but he's starting to find a method of not just surviving but thriving off the back foot. His contributions over the last 2 years have been some of the most important, and not just in Test cricket but across formats. So it's great to see him confident at the crease. he's exciting to watch when he's got the bat in the hand, because he's looking to score and he keeps pushing the game forward. And that middle to lower order is a damaging one for Australia.
Well, it seems to be the trend in which global cricket is going, is that there's not many runs up front. So actually, if you can get the tail wagging, and Australia are blessed, I guess, with some fast bowlers, Mitchell Stark as well, who can really hold a bat. I guess with Pat Cummins, is he's just got so much to contend with.
Yeah.
With that captaincy as well. It's so unusual to have a fast bowler as a captain. They're having to concentrate on your batting as well. I mean, it's almost too much to ask. And actually, when it does come, what a luxury that Australia have. Now somebody, I mean, his counterpart is somewhat struggling for runs, Rohit Sharma. And I must say, quite a nice stat that came up when Steve Smith reached his century was that the last time that Steve Smith scored a century in a Boxing Day test, it caused the retirement of the opposition captain.
Ooh.
That time it was 2017, and it hits home a little bit because it was Alistair Cook. Cook, excuse me, who retired shortly thereafter. So he seems to have this effect on opposing captains. Rohit Sharma's score 3, 6, 10 and 3. And even, I mean, he was slated to come in at 3, but then we heard, word on the grapevine was that he was actually going to open. KL Rahul had to make way. But to be honest, I mean, KL Rahul would have just shrugged his shoulders and gone, well, I'll be in anyway pretty soon. Which he was.
Well, he was.
Rohit Sharma's scores 3, 6, 10, 3. Today, it's not been a great series. I mean, does this precipitate his retirement? Is that it for him? Is that it for him this test? Is that it for him at the end of the series? What next for Rohit Sharma?
Oh, look, he would have a whole heap of things going through his mind. When you're not making runs, it's a pretty dark place as a batter, and the expectations are high, no less if you're the captain of India. I certainly hope this isn't the end of him. I certainly hope he comes out and makes some runs in the second. He's one of my favourite players to watch, but he's under enormous pressure, and it's not the Rohit Sharma we're used to seeing. He looks a little bit circumspect at the crease. He's probably not he's not jumping on the loose balls or looking to get on top of the opposition bowling and put the pressure back on them as much as what we're used to seeing. I'd love to see him free up a little bit, but it's never easy when you've had a run of outs to get yourself into that mode. So he's under enormous pressure, and I'd have no doubt that it would be in the back of his mind. How long do I want to keep playing for? How long do I want this pressure on me? There'd be a whole raft of things going through his mind. It's a tough place to be when you're in that position as Indian captain and not making runs.
Bit of a left field suggestion here, and I realise that his role is top of the order, but it really is not working right now. And we were talking just now about the fact that the glut of runs and the kind of the white ball style of play is where we see Reddy and Pant down the order. I mean, would it be outrageous to suggest that actually, maybe next innings or even the next test, he, as you say, he's such a brilliant white ball player, Rohit Sharma, put him down the order?
Well, I'd actually say there's no reason he can't play in that method and mode at the top of the order either. I think you could no problems have him going out and looking to jump on the first loose ball that comes his way, or even moving his feet out of the crease to try and take the bowling on. It's never easy. It's Test cricket. We know that. You're up against some of the best in the world. But at the moment, he just looks a little bit bereft of sharp decision making and confidence. And when I've seen him at his best, it's when he's taking the game on. And I'd love to see that wherever he bats. There's no reason he couldn't go down the order a bit further.
I'm thinking Jaiswal 1, KL Rahul 2 with him at the top of the order. Shubman Gill, I mean, he didn't really do all that much wrong to be dropped, coming at 3. And then, I mean, it is India's, just as well with Australia, India need to find that batting form. And to have the likes of Pant and Sharma down the order, it's just a suggestion.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it will ever come to fruition. But it just feels to me that it would be such a shame if he had a really dire series down here and then that was the end of Rohit Sharma, because he's been such a boon for Test cricket globally in the way that he's played and preserving Test cricket when we're constantly talking about the death of Test cricket.
Well, it's not going to get any easier for the Indian batters going to England next as well. No, so there's going to be some challenging batting conditions over there at times as well, but also some good batting conditions. So, look, I'm hopeful for the Indian cricket team and the fans that he can make some runs in these last 3 hits and really force the Indian selectors into taking him overseas as well to England.
One other man that seems to be taking it to the opposition, the young guns seem to be going all right this series so far. Because Jaiswal, I mean, he hit 82 of 118 balls. He's looked dead set for a second century of the series.
Not just the second century, but he goes big when he gets 100,
well,
doesn't
that's
he?
it. We were talking about sort of Morse code, binary code. He either gets nothing, it's all or nothing.
Yes.
I think, as you definitely put it, I sort of took far too long to try and get to the point.
I like the way you put it, though.
But yeah, he's all or nothing. He has ducks, or he gets 150 odd. And it felt today as that he was in that groove. He smashed Marsh for a beautiful six back over the bowler's head. He was hitting it like nothing else. And then there was that calamitous run out, which we've already discussed. Jury's out as to whether whose fault it was. But take me through the impact of a run out on not just Kohli but the rest of the team as well. Is there sort of to come back to the dressing room? Is there going to be a sort of nobody catches his eye kind of thing? Or
I tell you what, once Virat nicked off to Scott Boland late, and both of them would have been down in the dressing rooms, or if they were at the same, it would have been very quiet. I think it's never a nice scenario when a set player who's on track for a big score gets run out. It can go one of both ways. It can go, there's a lot of aggressive emotion down there in the dressing room, or it can become very quiet. And I think it would have been very quiet when Virat came into the rooms after that run out. Dressing rooms are really difficult places to be when something like that happens, because you know that you've just opened the door to the opposition when you've just had something special going, and then you lose that next wicket, and it's like, we've missed an opportunity here, and a really big one, because if Virat and Jaiswal were not out at the end of today's play, there would have been a real sense that this game could go either way. As it stands right now, Australia have all the ascendancy.
It reminds me, it doesn't remind me because I wasn't there, but you hear tales of in 1977, Geoffrey Boycott from England was quite notorious for running out other players. And there was one point where he ran out Derek Randall on his home ground, I think at Trent Bridge. And the commentary, I've heard it quite a few times, of John Arlott, this huge pause, and he goes, "Oh, how tragic, how tragic, how tragic." And that's kind of how I feel it sort of applies to this scenario here. But the man that instigated it in many respects, the man that was bowling at the time and then that nicked off Kohli afterwards, you can't really say his name without saying the Victorian Scott Boland, or MCG Scott Boland. Virat Kohli, Akash Deep late in the day. I mean, I talked to Heath about trying to get a stat for his bowling average in the evening session at the MCG.
It's extraordinary.
Must be absolutely ridiculous. So we reckon that it's in the single figures.
Oh dear.
So an averaging about 8.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I mean, a big part of that came against England in the Ashes, let's be honest.
That's
but
right.
already this evening he's got two in the evening session. How big? I mean, is momentum? I think Pat Cummins has said momentum isn't a thing. But surely, with the crowd behind you and the evening session like that, momentum is now in Australia's hands.
Shane Bond tried to say that as coach of the Sydney Thunder when I was captain, and it was a bit of a running joke within the team, because it is a divisive thing, momentum, and I'm a firm believer in momentum, and I think it gives Australia enormous momentum. Look, he's done it again late in the day when an opponent looks like they're just trying to get a foothold in the game. Scott Boland bowls it in the areas you just don't want it as a new batter to the crease, and that's right on off bail, with a hint of movement either way, and he'll expose something in a wicket whenever there's something there when others haven't been able to find it. And again, he's come through big for Australia when he's got the opportunity. And it is hard not to say the Victorian, but the big Victorian, the barrel, Scott Boland, gets the job done again for Australia. He is one of the most revered competitors, not just at domestic level, but at international level, because you know what you're getting from him. He's just going to continually charge in and hit good areas.
Well, India trail at stumps by 310. 5 more wickets to get for Australia, so I'm sure we'll see a lot of him in the morning session tomorrow morning, day 3 at the MCG. It's time now for the secret cricket club questions.
Oh, we like these.
And Jeff asks, this is a brilliant one. Actually, I've been thinking about this a lot. Bumrah
You got these in advance?
No, I just, I look at them and I think, hindsight's a wonderful thing.
Yes, yeah, always.
Bumrah was the captain in the first test because Rohit was away. So Jeff asks, should Bumrah captain Team India in Sydney? I think Rohit's been found wanting since he took over the reins, or took back over the reins.
Look, I'm a firm believer that at the start of the series, if you select a captain, they're there for the series, and that won't change for me. I believe that Rohit Sharma has been captain of this side for a long period of time. The selectors have said Rohit Sharma's the man for this job for this series. I think that's ironclad once you make that call. And unless there's extraordinary circumstances, like a run of ducks, a run of, first or second ball or something extraordinary, that won't change for mine.
It just seems to me that the wider impact of the team and the speculation and the furore that it would cause, it would be such a momentous call.
Destabilising in a big way.
That you can't, that you wouldn't change. But it's not to say that actually India might be in a better position if they had Bumrah at the helm, but probably not and shouldn't happen in this series.
I tend to agree. I think at 1-1 now, even if it goes to 2-1 going into the last test, they're one test win away from just holding on to the border-gavaskar trophy. They don't have to win this series.
The only way in which we would have a different captain is we've already had one shock retirement this series, mid-series.
Surely not.
So
he won't.
I'm just saying
Rohit
it's
Sharma
a possibility.
Won't retire. No, I think you stick with him. It's still a really important, and it would be destabilising. The retirement, not so much, but if he was to be dropped.
No, I agree. Interesting.
Great
so
question.
much can happen. Yeah,
we get great questions on Willow Talk.
Srinivasan asked, and we're watching the ground staff watering the pitch, and this is quite pertinent to that. Has the MCG pitch changed with less swing to offer, or was it poor discipline from Indian bowlers? I mean, I have a stab at that to start with. I'd say it's probably a bit of both. Because the morning session, where we saw that century partnership between Cummins and Smith, it actually reminded me of, I think it was the evening of day 1 or 2 at Adelaide, when Australia were into bat late in the evening session. You felt, right, pink ball under lights. This could go all India's way after the Perth test. And they just failed to hit the stumps.
Yes.
And it felt like that happened a lot this morning.
Yeah, look, they just weren't on their game at the start of the day, there's no doubt. Leaking 8 runs in the first over, and then from there Australia had all the momentum. The Australians brought wonderful intent at the start of today. Tried to put pressure back onto the bowlers, and they were successful in doing that. And I really do feel as though in this first innings, the Australian batters at no point allowed the Indian bowlers to settle, and that started with Sam Constas at the start. It was a bit erratic, and it was overtly aggressive. But what that mentality and that approach does do, if it comes off, is rattle the opposition. The bowlers lose their sense for the top of the off bail, because there was plenty in that wicket yesterday, and they weren't able to regather themselves after the initial onslaught. And I think the wicket has changed significantly from the start of today to the back end of the day, and Australia was still able to find something out of it. So
100%.
I do feel as though it was probably just a lack of composure from the Indian bowlers that let them down.
I think it's a fantastic pitch, and I think gone are the days of Alistair Cook creaming, or not creaming, but crawling perhaps to 200 odd over the course of 5 days. I think it's got a lot in it for everyone, and we've seen some really good Test cricket so far. 3 days left to go. We might even get a 5-day Test out.
I think we're on here. I
like that idea. Stuart asks, should Australia have bounced Kohli first ball?
Oh. I never mind a bouncer to a batter first ball, just to show intent.
He got quite a reception coming out to the crease.
He did.
Because, of course, we saw the whole barging incident yesterday, and Kohli, the pantomime. But he's taken over from Siraj here.
Yeah, he has.
Sort of an arm wrestle for that role. But, the MCG was united in its reception for Kohli as he came out to the crease. But no bouncer. I mean, he's nicked off quite a few times to just a good length ball.
Yeah, he has. I think, I've always, as I've just mentioned, I'm a big fan of just letting a batter know that you're about and having an impression on them early. But I do feel Virat's a slightly different beast. He has shown a weakness recently, in particular, to a 4th or 5th stump line. So I think you want to get in and around that off bail to start with, but you don't want to leave it too long before you show him a short ball. We've all got so much respect for Virat Kohli, and again today he showed his worth. He had the ability today to go big in this innings, and I do feel like that run out did destabilise him a little bit at the crease. So he was a bit worried about that, and it probably put him off his game because he wasn't the same player after that run out, there's no doubt. So I'm quite comfortable with the good length delivery.
Now, Cal, there's been a lot of nostalgia evoked during the MCG Boxing Day Test, as it happens every year. But one brilliant moment, and we were in a lovely position here in our commentary box because we can see Bay 13 straight across the outfield. And Bo asked, how good is it seeing Sam Constas interacting with the crowd a la Merv Hughes? And when we say interacting, of course, it was the classic stretching and the crowd and Bay 13 following as well. I mean, that was great to see.
No, the full experience of Bay 13 for Sam Constas is great to see. We saw a bit of that from Travis Head over the last few years. Bay 13 certainly got their favourites, and I think Sam Constas will be a favourite going forward for Bay 13, just like Merv Hughes was. Maybe not to the same level of the great Victorian
He's got a bit of work to do on his moustache.
Yeah, the Tash's got work to do. That needs to lengthen out a little bit. But certainly great to see the young man get that experience, and certainly on the back of some wonderful batting in the first day. They were very receptive to the young man.
Yeah, he was enjoying it for all it was worth. I heard, I think it was Usman Khawaja was interviewed down on the outfield at some point and was talking about the reaction of the rest of the Australians in the dugout as he was playing that innings. And I think apparently Steve Smith literally walked out and went, right, I'm done. I'm done.
Couldn't handle it anymore.
Yeah, absolutely
His heart
not.
couldn't handle it anymore. Brilliant.
We
were a bit like that at times in here, actually.
Oh, yeah,
there was a lot
absolutely.
going on. Tubby nearly fainted when there was a lap sweep played in the first half an hour.
You'll know from yesterday's Willow Talk Extras episode that actually the whole reason that we saw all those ramp shots and unorthodox play was because Tubby had given the cap presentation and told him exactly how to play.
Very strict instructions. That's
absolutely.
right.
So don't defer from that narrative.
No, that's right. Absolutely.
Final question then. Steed asks, and interesting one. One for you specifically.
Okay.
There was a moment on Triple M commentary. I think I was on there with you as well.
Okay.
Where you may have uttered the words "prouder than a honeymoon's ... And Steed wants to know what exactly was the moment prouder than a honeymoon's what?
Well, I was referring to the seam of the ball, and I think we can all use our imagination.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Answers on a postcard, ladies and gents. I'm Izzy Westbury, Carl Ferguson beside me. Lots to ponder, brilliant questions, keep them coming through. But that's the end of day 2 here at the MCG in the fourth test, the Boxing Day test, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks for watching the Willow Talk podcast on YouTube. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't have to miss an episode wherever you are. And while you're at it, check out these videos up here. They're mostly good.